All right, let's get right into it. We're going to explore some of the biggest compliance meltdowns in banking history. We're talking about times when the rulebook wasn't just ignored, it was completely torn up. We'll look at what went so wrong, the unbelievable price tags, and what everyone learned from these absolute catastrophes.
And that is, believe me, no exaggeration at all. The consequences here are so much bigger than just the fines. We're talking about public trust just evaporating. We're talking about a total rethink of regulations and reputations that were left in ruins for years. That's where the real lasting damage happens.
Now you've got to understand, these weren't just a few typos or a couple of rogue employees. Nope. What we're looking at here are deep, systemic failures. A culture inside these massive institutions that put profits and aggressive sales targets way ahead of doing the right thing legally and ethically. The internal controls that were supposed to stop this, they either failed or were just ignored.
So let's walk through this, well, you could call it a gallery of failures. Each one of these cases is a story about a major breakdown that sent shockwaves through the entire global financial system. First on our list is Wells Fargo. And this one was just, wow, it was so shocking because of how it directly hit regular people. You had employees under unbelievable pressure to hit these insane sales goals, so they started opening millions of bank accounts and credit cards in customers' names, all without their permission.
And the price for that kind of widespread betrayal of trust? A cool $3.7 billion. That's the number regulators landed on as the penalty for deceiving customers on such a colossal scale.
Okay, next up is HSBC, and this is where things take a turn into the world of organized crime. Their anti-money laundering systems were, to put it mildly, a joke. They were so bad that the bank basically became a superhighway for international drug cartels to launder hundreds of millions of dollars.
For letting that happen, for essentially enabling these massive criminal organizations, HSBC got slapped with a fine of $1.9 billion. It was a very clear message. Turning a blind eye to dirty money is going to cost you big time.
JP Morgan Chase found itself in hot water for two huge reasons. First, they played a major role in the lead-up to the 2008 financial crisis by misleading investors about risky mortgage deals. And as if that wasn't enough, they also failed to raise the alarm on all the red flags surrounding Bernie Madoff's legendary Ponzi scheme.
So for that double whammy, JP Morgan Chase had to agree to a truly mind-boggling settlement of $13 billion. That is still one of the largest corporate fines in history. Just let that number sink in. And sticking with the mortgage crisis, we have Bank of America. They were right there in the thick of it. The allegation was simple. They knew the mortgage products they were bundling up and selling were incredibly risky, these toxic assets you heard so much about. They knew it, and they sold them to investors anyway. The final bill for that? An absolutely historic figure, over $30 billion. A number so massive because it had to reflect the immense scale of the damage that helped trigger a global economic meltdown.
Now this next one is a little different. This isn't about bad mortgages, it's about geopolitics. BNP Paribas, a huge French bank, got caught red-handed. They had been deliberately processing billions of dollars in transactions for countries like Sudan, Iran, and Cuba, all of which were under strict U.S. economic sanctions at the time.
For intentionally helping these countries get around sanctions, the bank paid a very, very heavy price, almost $9 billion. This was a clear shot across the bow to the entire global banking community. All right, let's talk about Goldman Sachs and their part in the enormous 1MDB scandal out of Malaysia. The bank helped a state-run fund raise billions of dollars, but, well, a huge chunk of that money vanished, allegedly stolen by corrupt officials. Goldman was accused of ignoring some seriously obvious warning signs.
For its role in that mess, one of the biggest corruption scandals of our time, Goldman Sachs ended up paying out over $5 billion in penalties to regulators all over the world, from the US all the way to Malaysia itself.
And just to prove that this isn't all ancient history, let's look at something super recent from the crypto world. Binance, the biggest crypto exchange on the planet, was found guilty of violating the Bank Secrecy Act. Why? Because they failed to report thousands of sketchy transactions linked to terrorist groups, among other things.
And the fine for this very modern compliance failure? A whopping $4.3 billion. It just goes to show you that regulators are absolutely applying the same tough rules to the new frontier of digital finance. So after this tidal wave of scandals and failures, you have to ask, what happened next?
The answer was a massive global regulatory reckoning. Agencies like the SEC, the Department of Justice, and FinCEN knew things had to change and they had to act fast.
So they rolled out a multi-part plan. First, they created much tougher anti-money laundering rules to cut off the flow of illicit money. Then, they demanded way more transparency so investors couldn't be so easily misled. And this one's huge. They created much stronger protections for whistleblowers, the people on the inside who could see the problems firsthand. And finally, they renewed their focus on holding actual people accountable, not just finding the company.
So, when all the smoke cleared, what were the big takeaways? What do we learn from this whole messy era? Well, these weren't lessons learned in some textbook. They were forged in the fire of a global crisis, and they have completely changed the game for the financial industry.
So, let's break down the key lessons. First, compliance can't just be a department you stick in the basement. It has to be baked into the company's culture. That's the Wells Fargo lesson. Second, as 1MDB showed us, these violations have ripple effects that cross oceans. Third, if you harm consumers directly, your reputation can collapse overnight. Fourth, regulators learn they're way more powerful when they work together across borders. And finally, as the Binance case proved, technology and crime are always evolving, and the good guys have to evolve right along with them.
And that really gets to the heart of it all, doesn't it? Financial institutions spend billions to earn our trust. But as all these stories show, when that trust is broken, compliance isn't a request, it's a demand, and it will be enforced. It's that constant tension, that delicate balance, that really defines our modern financial world.